Okay, let's make a start. So welcome back. This is session 3 now of our 4-parter on the immune system. Turbocharge your immune system is our topic for today. So Florence will be presenting to you this morning. Florence is an extremely skilled nutritional therapist who works with us at the clinic. And she'll be taking you through some of the factors that are the main things that really impair your immune system and how to deal with those. And we'll be talking quite a bit about nutritional supplements as well today. So it does, like the last one, it builds on the one before. So if you've missed session 1 or session 2, you can catch up of those. If you need the link, just drop us an email or go on the website and it's on there. With everything that Florence takes you through today, just please remember that any supplements we mention they're called supplements for a reason. So they are supplementary to a healthy diet. So please try and focus on the foundations first. And then the supplements just work so much better to boost everything on top of that. So I'll hand over to Florence now and sit back and enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well today. Thank you for having me. So, here we go. So this is us, you know us by now, but just to jog your memories. And today we're going back to this idea of terrain versus germ. So we've been through this, we've looked at this wheel every slide up until today, and you'll be familiar with germ avoidance, so that's masks, social distancing and vaccination. And then the bit that we're really interested in is thinking about all the other areas of health that we can be working on, and in order to protect ourselves from pathogens and live alongside them in a kind of different way to just avoidance. So today are 2 big topics. Excuse me, I'm going to hide myself because I'm finding myself distracting. There we go. So today we're talking about stress and sleep. So 2 huge topics which everybody will have an association with. So sleep's an interesting thing for all of us. We all have our own relationship with sleep. We all have periods of difficult sleep or struggling to fall off to get to sleep, or waking in the night or waking up early. Nobody's sleep is perfect, and this is by no means coming from a place of any of us having any of these things perfectly in line. I struggled to fall off to sleep myself last night, ironically, before talking to you today about sleep. So culturally, our relationship with sleep, I think, is an interesting one to think about as well. There's this almost badge of honor in certain workspaces and circles about having low sleep. So the idea of work hard, play hard, or the phrase, I'll sleep when I'm dead, which I used to hear a lot when I worked in the world of events management. So Matthew Walker is an amazing sleep expert, and he's written books and lots of podcasts. So if you're not familiar with him already, I recommend looking him up because he's fascinating. And what he says is we spend 1/3 of our life asleep, and that shows how crucial it is for our health and our existence. And if we weren't supposed to spend this much time asleep, then that would be a really, really big malfunction in human creation. And so with that in mind, we have these 2 split ways of functioning and methods that our body does when we're awake versus when we're asleep. So when we're awake, we're all about eating, thinking, recreating, moving, problem solving. And then on the flip side of that, when we're asleep, a complete other process takes place. So we detox when we're asleep, and that's our liver detoxing and taking out the trash, as it were, and getting you set up for the next day. And our brain does a huge amount of detoxing while we sleep as well. So we drain excess unwanted fluids and toxins from the brain, and we do a huge amount of processing. We order our memories and our experiences from the day before into kind of a shelving system so that we can start again the next day. So it's a process of repair and recovery and recuperation to keep us ticking along and to keep us functioning when we are awake. So hugely important. And obviously today we're thinking about the sleep in relation to our immune system. So our immune system, like our brain and like our liver, behaves completely differently whilst we're asleep. It has a secret life of activity, and major repair work happens whilst we're sleeping. So our immune cells behave differently, and this is very relevant at the moment when everybody is thinking about or beginning to be vaccinated, because we know from research that actually you are much more likely to have a positive immune cell antibody response that's stronger if you sleep well after being vaccinated or in the days after vaccination. And that just goes to show how much work is going on whilst you're asleep and hopefully dreaming about something lovely. So this is also why when we're unwell, we get an overwhelming urge to sleep and to relax. It's just a really simple message from your body that recovery work needs to take place, and in order to do so you need to be horizontal and going to sleep. And that's why this idea of soldiering through and pushing on and going to work anyway when you're a bit run down is actually really problematic, but that might change after all of this. I think people will be much more willing to stay home when they've got a bit of a tickly throat or whatever. So sleep is our #1 antiviral, and all the supplements in the world, the most perfect diet in the world, isn't even going to touch the sides if we're not able to rest and relax. So we'll be thinking about that today and thinking about some quick wins and ways to really support sleep. So our circadian rhythm, everybody will have heard of this and will probably have a little bit of an understanding about what it is, but just to refresh your memories, our circadian rhythm is an internal clock within us, which is constantly ticking away. And our circadian rhythm actually has an impact on lots of other little clocks throughout the body. So it can influence a hormonal clock or a digestive clock or a bacterial clock. So our microbiome behave following a certain rhythm as well. And it's this beautiful rhythm within us that keeps us all alive. And our circadian rhythm is regulated by light, which penetrates us in the morning and sends a message all over our body, but particularly through our eyes and into our brain, that it's time to wake up and get on with the day. And then as the day goes on, we enter darkness, and darkness enters in the same way and tells our pineal gland that it's time to begin releasing melatonin and begin winding down for the day. So this clock is constantly interacting with all of our systems, and we have it has a direct relationship on our nervous system as well, which the kind of two are going to tie in together. But if our sleep is impacted even by an hour, our nervous system behaves completely differently. So we release more adrenaline and more cortisol the next day if we've had less sleep. And we can't think about sleep these days without thinking about blue light, which again, everybody will be familiar with. There's been a big push from tech companies and elsewhere to really think about exposure to blue light and how to limit your exposure to blue light. So the reason why this is so important is because the blue light from screens, phones, laptops is interrupting that message being sent to the pineal gland. So your brain and your body begins to get confused that it's still daylight when it isn't. So that's why watching Netflix on a laptop all the way up to going to bed can actually be hugely problematic. And some people are much more sensitive to it than others. But the way that we can begin to counteract this is not to say no screens whatsoever, because, you know, as we can see today, screens are hugely beneficial, and we wouldn't be able to be here today doing what we're doing if it wasn't for screens. So I definitely encourage you all to think about how you can work on your relationship with screens. So there's most phones now will have a blue light blocking function, or an evening mode, or you can get screens to go on laptops and get it to dim into less blue screen as the day goes on. So I switch mine on at 4 and I don't even notice that it's happening. Oh, and then so thinking again about routine and about rhythm and how we can really encourage this rhythm and our clock, we can get into a routine of waking up at the same time and going to sleep at the same time every day, and that just encourages this clock function, this circadian rhythm. So waking up and exposing yourself to that first ray of sunlight in the morning before doing anything else, so before looking at a screen, before having breakfast, before having a shower, is a really good way to just remind your brain that this is the start of the day. And another really simple habit to get into is setting your alarm to wake up at the same time every day and go to bed at the same time every day, even on weekends, which should be fairly easy at the moment given that there's nothing better to do. But I appreciate that if you have teenagers, then asking them to wake up at 8 a.m. on the weekend is going to be problematic. But it's these little tricks and simple changes that won't impact sleep immediately, but over time they can really shift a disrupted circadian rhythm. So there's going to be a few people watching this who feel very frustrated by me kind of talking about ways to improve sleep, but actually it's much more difficult for some people. I know that chronic insomnia is a common and really challenging thing to encounter. So I wanted to talk about some quick wins and some supplements that can actually help raise melatonin and ease relaxation. So a really lovely food source is a specific type of cherry called Montmorency cherries, and they sound fancy. They're not particularly. You can either buy them dried in a bag, or they come in a powdered form, or you can buy a very concentrated form of Montmorency cherry. And they contain melatonin and can really help tip over that bridge between struggling to fall asleep and getting off. So having a glass of Montmorency in the evening on the before you go to bed can really help. And then we think about our cofactors that help us create melatonin in the first place. So in order to create any kind of hormone or neurotransmitter, there's a whole chemical process that goes on which needs the help of other vitamins and minerals in order to get to that end point of creating whatever it is. Obviously at the moment we're talking about melatonin. So zinc, B vitamins and magnesium help with that creation. Magnesium has a dual effect. It helps in the creation of melatonin, but it's also really soothing and relaxing and really just helps to switch our nervous system into a resting state. And the best form of magnesium is magnesium glycinate. So it's magnesium plus glycine, and glycine is an amino acid which is really calming and soothing, and it's this combination that we use most in clinic for people who struggle with sleep, and it works very quickly and we get really nice results with that. Essential fats, so oily fish, avocado, nuts, seeds, particularly walnuts, they are a great source of omega-3 fats, and the reason why that's going to help with sleep and with brain function generally is purely because our brain is one big lump of fat and we're feeding it and fueling it what it needs in order to function optimally. Tryptophan is an amino acid which can be taken supplementally, or you can even have foods that contain tryptophan. And the reason why tryptophan is so important for food and mood, sleep and mood, is because tryptophan is within protein, and once we eat proteins that contain tryptophan, they are then converted into amino acids, serotonin and melatonin. So certain proteins will break down into certain amino acids and the body will use them for different functions. So proteins and foods containing tryptophan include bananas, oats, pistachios, turkey and chicken. And then there's things like hops and Valeria root, passion flower. These herbs are really calming and can help ease into the evening and just aid relaxation. Pucker tea do a very nice nighttime blend which has a couple of these herbs in there. And as Julia said before, if you are on medication or wanting to use supplements, please take into consideration improving diet and what you're eating as well, because a lot of these nutrients we can get from diet. So it's a helping hand, but not the whole story. Okay, so hand in hand with sleep comes stress. And again, I've been wondering about our relationship with stress at the moment, and obviously we are in a hugely difficult, challenging time, and stress levels are right up. And I was researching and thinking about the impact of stress on our immune system, and I came across an amazing study which found that the cold sore virus, which is the herpes family of viruses, has a strand of DNA in it which sole job is to patrol the body basically in the host and evaluate their cortisol levels, so stress levels. And once the host, so the person with the virus, once their stress levels reach a certain point, that same strand of DNA reactivates the virus, and then you would get a cold sore. So this is something that many people will have cold sores and will be able to relate to that, or will have a friend that has cold sores. I have a lot of teachers, friends who struggle with cold sores, and I think it's something to do with that stress level all throughout term, and then towards the end cortisol and stress chemistry goes so high that they end up with a cold sore. And I know a few people that have that happen to them. And it's a really interesting one thinking about this in relation to viruses and viral behaviour, because on the one hand we know that viruses are really cunning and that they will do anything in order to survive and recreate and be able to stay in the host that they find themselves in. But then if you flip that over on the other side, can we use viruses to help us understand when we're run down and when we need to strengthen our immune systems and when we need to wind down and de-stress? Is that herpes virus actually helpful, and is it sending us a message for those people who get colds, or is it telling us something that we need to react to that we wouldn't normally kind of see so physically? Maybe an unpopular opinion, but something to think about. And in the case of coronavirus, we don't know if it has the ability to sniff out stress levels, but viruses are smart and they will do anything to survive and to grow. So when we're stressed, I've mentioned cortisol a few times, so let's think about that a bit more. So in the case of acute stress, we release adrenaline. And that's that feeling that everybody will be familiar with: heart racing, surge of energy, everything in place in order to make a quick dash. That's adrenaline. And then sustained stress, so more prolonged stress over time, we swap adrenaline for cortisol. And we are very familiar in clinic with the relationship between stress and cortisol and the immune system, because very, very often people with an autoimmune condition, which we work with a lot, will experience a flare-up after a period of stress, or even the first time they've experienced an autoimmunity of any kind is often after a stressful event. So the relationship between stress and our immune system and inflammation is a very close and intricate relationship. So when we're stressed, we ramp up immune activity and inflammation, and when we're inflamed, our nervous system releases stress chemicals. So the two have a kind of relentless, messy, thorny relationship whereby they stimulate each other. So one can't exist without the other, and they rely on each other, but actually it can get quite tangled and quite messy, really. So thinking of that, I was wondering of a way to kind of keep that sticking in your mind. So think about Rizzo and Kenickie, think about Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, or Kat and Alfie. The two are entwined and they wind each other up, but ultimately we need stress and we need our immune system to work together as a pair. So if we in clinic, when we see a client who's has high stress levels, we're always thinking about how their immune system is behaving, and vice versa. If somebody's immune system is dysregulated, we're always thinking about how their nervous system is behaving and how we can support the two. So this here is a picture of two different people. So on the left, we have somebody with small amounts of cortisol. So a small amount of stress is actually good for our immune system, and I'll circle back to that. So we can see that we've got a little bit of stress here, and then a healthy antibody response, so healthy amounts of immune chemicals. And then on the right, we have this person who's much more stressed and is releasing much more cortisol and has much lower levels of antibodies. You just kind of visualize that. And going back to our barriers, so if you haven't watched weeks 1 and 2 with Julia, who discusses our barriers extensively, I do encourage you to go back and look at those. But our barriers are the world between inside, the crossover between inside and outside world, and they're hugely important in terms of our immune system. And cortisol can actually break down the lining of our gut barriers. And actually just the presence of cortisol within the body can impact your microbiome and your gut bacteria. So they find, after a period of sustained cortisol release, our microbiome find just the presence of cortisol so inhospitable that they retreat in themselves, and that impacts our levels of good bacteria. And just physically, the impact of cortisol damaging the gut lining is inflammatory, and that an inflamed gut causes an upregulated immune response, which leads to a weakened immune system and just generally makes us more vulnerable to infection. So what can we do to help reduce stress? One thing that I ask people to do quite a lot and get mixed responses is something called earthing, so walking barefoot in nature, so in grass or in soil. And this has been scientifically proven to reduce stress. It can also improve sleep and even improve and boost your immune system. And the reason for this is when we're stressed, our levels of electrons drop, and we need electrons in order to fulfill many processes and functions in the body. And by barefoot walking, you're connecting your foot with the earth and with the soil, and it's almost like plugging yourself into charge, so you get an immediate top up of electrons from the earth into our body, and that can happen even just after a few minutes. So I challenge you all to take off your shoes this afternoon and try some earthing, even if it's just for a few minutes. And I know some of you will be thinking, well, it's too cold or it's wet. Is it wet today? It was definitely wet yesterday. But actually the slight stress of being cold or having wet feet may even boost your immune system even more, and I'll come on to that in slightly more detail. So thinking about what we can do, nutrients that we can take in order to support our immune system. So we go back to essential fatty acids, so very, very good fuel for our brain, which is made from fat. And B vitamins and magnesium, again, really important, because when we're stressed, we use up a huge amount of B vitamins and magnesium in order to kind of deal with the oncoming stresses. So you can never go too far wrong by topping up B vitamins and magnesium. And often you can find a complex with the two. There's something called adaptogenic herbs, which I really enjoy using. There are a category of herbs which can support your stress response, so kind of make you more resilient and just go in and adapt. So if you're producing too much stress hormone, it can bring stress hormone down, and if you're not producing enough, it can kind of bring you up, so it acts as a really nice buffer. And then L-theanine is a lovely, inexpensive amino acid, which again, very, very calming and works very quickly as well. So that can be taken daily to help with stress and anxiety, but it can also be taken in periods of more acute stress as well. So how can we really turbocharge our immune system? There are a list of nutrients. Some have received lots of attention in the news recently, and rightly so. So vitamin A and vitamin D are fat-soluble nutrients. And they help to regulate our immune system for defense and repair. They also strengthen the lining of the gut, so going back to that barrier and the importance of that being strong. Vitamin C is what our white blood cells need in order to fight an infection. And when there is an infection, we can run low on vitamin C. So just topping that up can be really beneficial. Zinc modulates immune activity and viral activity, and it can inhibit viral replication, and can also help with the loss of smell and taste, which we're still not sure exactly what causes that, but it's potentially due to a drop in zinc, and one of the side effects of low zinc is loss of senses like that. Quercetin is less talked about, but it's an incredibly helpful plant chemical, and it protects the lungs, and it inhibits viral replication, and it can actually inactivate viruses as well. And quercetin is also brilliant for general allergies and immune sensitivities, so we use it a lot in summer for people with hay fever, and it can be really, really effective. Glutathione is our body's major antioxidant, so in times of infection or rundown or inflammation, we'll use up a huge amount of glutathione, and it's so important for defense and repair of our cells. And just by taking glutathione, you're kind of topping up your natural reserves, which can help strengthen your cells to respond to infection. And we did a post on our Facebook a few weeks ago on Julia Davis Nutrition Facebook page on these nutrients and specific dosages in the event of actually picking up an infection. And these nutrients, they can be used as general prevention. They can be used in the event of picking up an infection, but also they can be used in the run-up to receiving a vaccination, and actually after the vaccination, just to help strengthen your immune response. So really helpful. And then at the bottom, there's pre and probiotics. So this is thinking directly about your gut bacteria, and we know that they play a really important role in immune regulation and communicating with our immune system and our immune cells. And there's some interesting studies looking into probiotics and the uptake of vaccination, and how taking probiotics after having a vaccination can again help with our immune response to the antibody response to being vaccinated. So going back to some of the things that we've already discussed over the last few weeks, so breathing, and particularly breathing outside, so really taking in a deep breath and opening up those lungs in amongst nature has been found to improve your immune system. And there's different ways of looking at this. My favorite is that if you are breathing in different environments and different climates and different bacterial ecosystems, actually taking that in can improve your own bacteria and your own microbiome, which in turn is really good for the immune system. And exercise. So exercise stimulates your immune system to work more optimally. So just the process of working up a little bit of a sweat increases the flow of immune cells all over the body, and basically spreads them out and allows them to do what they do best, which is to patrol and to protect us. And when I talk about exercise, we mean moderate exercise, so working up a light sweat and getting your heart rate moving a little bit, but being at a point where you can still talk but perhaps not sing. So that's not really intensive exercise, which has actually been found to potentially reduce our immune system. So somewhere in the middle, and some people will be doing regular exercise, some people won't. So just remember to do slightly more than you did yesterday, and you can't go far wrong really. And also, what do you like doing, and how can you make exercise enjoyable? So for me, I like putting on Christina Aguilera and dancing around, and for other people they prefer going on a walk or going for a run. Just make it work for you. And we've talked about this a lot last week, but in terms of diet and nutrition, you really can't go far wrong if you just aim to eat the rainbow. And by that we mean get as many different colours of fruit and vegetables as you can into one day, and all those different polyphenols and plant chemicals will be feeding a different one of your gut bacteria and helping them to remain strong and healthy, and in turn really improving and supporting your immune system and the way that it functions. But also a wide variety of fruit and vegetables contains lots of different vitamins and minerals, and as we've seen today, they're really helpful in terms of supporting our immune system. And then last but by no means least, taking cold showers. So some people will already be doing this. We've been really thrilled to see and hear stories of people beginning to do this over lockdown. And there was a BBC TV programme called The Truth About Supporting Your Immune System, and they talked about cold showers. And the reason why they're beneficial for our immune system is going back to what I touched on earlier, is that it's a short, sharp burst of stress. And that process of creating a very small amount of stress just stimulates your immune system and gets it working slightly more efficiently. So it's just a brilliant, easy and free thing that everybody can be doing from home. And with that in mind, another way of stimulating a short stress response is watching a scary film, or in my case, doing some public speaking. And those things, both of those things as well, seem to behave in the same way in terms of supporting our immune system. So thank you for your time today. And if you are looking to source some of the nutrients that we've been through today, our partner Margaret Hills has an amazing supply of all the products that I've mentioned today, and a really helpful team that you can go in and visit, or pop online or give them a call, and they are extremely helpful and a lovely team.
Thanks, Florence. That was really interesting. So just a word about next week. So our plan next week is we're not going to have any presentation next week. We're going to focus just on questions that you have submitted throughout this series. So we've got quite a few different sorts of inquiries. So what we plan on doing is kind of group them all together and just cover those things that we're getting most inquiries about. If you could please submit the questions in advance, just because there's too many of you to open the microphones and interact in that way. But you can still use the chat box throughout, as you have done at each session. So if you just think of a question at the Q&A, you're still very welcome to ask it there through the chat box. Now, one particular area that we've had a lot of inquiries about is specific to the COVID vaccination. So we've got some information that we're putting together at the moment about some of our recommendations that will potentially just help you get your body into the best of health before and afterwards, and addressing those other factors that might really help with the antibody response when you get the vaccine. So that's something that we plan on doing a bit of a special feature on next week. And other than that, we'll just be going through the questions and hoping that you got everything answered that you need. And lastly, what we wanted to mention at this point is, if you would, now just thinking about the future really, because I think this has been a really nice thing to do, to have a group of you and touch base. And although sadly we can't be offering it every week on an ongoing basis, but we would quite like to do maybe some other subjects, or have different things. We're your community. We want to support you, and there's a lot of stuff that we know about health and how to deal with common problems or really complicated problems. And if you would like to kind of pick our brains on that, will you just please let us know specifically what topics you really want help on, and then we can just plan some things going forward throughout the year. And we just take it from there. We just want to respond to what you're looking for, really. So thank you for coming today. And what we're going to do now is actually leave the Zoom thing open, so that if you've got any questions, you can just type them at your leisure, and then we'll be able to save those and then answer them next time. So feel free to do that. We'll leave it running for 5 or 10 minutes and then we will close. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.